Hello everyone, I'm Shane from EnglishWise. Today we're going to be talking about IELTS speaking tips. So before we start, I'm going to give you a brief detail about what these speaking tasks entails. So speaking task is the same for academic and general. It's going to be 11 to 14 minutes of face-to-face interview with an assessor. It's going to have three parts. The first part is going to be general conversations, second part is going to be cue card, and the third part is going to be follow-up to the second part. Usually the third part is a little bit more broader and abstract than the second one. So now let's begin and talk about some of the tips and strategies that you can use during your speaking test to improve your scores. So the first thing that I want to tell you all is always try to be chatty instead of being smart. So I see a lot of students, they learn a lot of grammatical things, they learn a lot of vocabulary from YouTube and some other sources, and they want to use these words in their speaking task. But generally what happens is that when they use it, it doesn't come off as natural. So when you try to think of these complex sentences, vocabulary while in the middle of speaking, it hampers your natural flow, and that may affect your band scores. So instead of doing that, my approach would be try to be more chatty, don't try to give a smart answer. So if the question is something like describe a picture you like, you can just describe a selfie you took this morning instead of trying to come up with an elaborate thing that you have thought of in your mind. Always try to do that. So even with non-native English speakers, what I usually find is people who score higher band score in speaking, their answers are usually really clear and really simple, and there's no conflicting information in them. So keep that in mind, always try to be chatty instead of being smart. So the next tip that I can give you is try to be semi-formal. So you hear this a lot from different sources. Some people say it's informal, so try to be more casual about it. Some people say treat it like a job interview. My advice is it kind of falls in between those two. So you don't want to be too informal. You don't want to use slangs. You don't want to treat the interviewer like a friend and use the vocabulary that you use for talking with a friend. What you want to actually do is be respectful to the speaker. Try not to say things that are too controversial. Do not use slangs, and try to be at least a little bit formal. So what I mean by that is you're not allowed to use words like kids. Maybe instead use children instead of that. You can't say things like I have stuff in my room. Maybe replace that with something like I have items in my room. So small vocabulary words like these, you can change it to a semi-formal word. And that would be the second tip. So the third tip is don't try to speak too fast. I feel like a lot of people have this misconception that talking too fast generally means higher score. That could not be more wrong. So what you want to do is talk at a normal pace or a pace that you're generally talking, and maintain that throughout the conversation. So even if you're a fast speaker, you want to slow down your speech so that you don't run into mixed sentences, you don't run into pronunciation error, you don't want to say the wrong word at the wrong time, or take the risk of the examiner missing a word that you say. So you don't want to do those things. So even if you're a fast speaker, try to slow down the pace of your speaking so that the examiner can understand you better. Always try to do that. So the fourth tip for you guys would be don't stress out if the examiner interrupts in the middle of your sentence. So a common thing in IELTS speaking is you are giving an answer, and while you're giving the answer, the examiner suddenly tells you to stop and he moves on to a different question. Now some students may find this to be very rude, or they may get confused why the examiner stopped them, and they may think maybe I did something wrong, or maybe I need to change what I'm saying. That is false. So the examiner is looking for checking if you have told what they are looking for, and if you have done so, they have no reason to let you continue to talk for a while. So they might just interrupt you and move on to the next question. Or sometimes some people speak to a great length. In that case, they may stop you from talking too long too. So those are the two reasons why the examiner may stop you. So don't worry if the examiner tells you to stop answering a certain question and then moves on. Try to not take that personally. Just answer your question. If he stops, move on to the next question. Fifth tip would be repeating the same question can be given the same answers. So what do I mean by that? Let's say, for example, in part 1 you're asked, what city do you live in, and you answer with, I live in Brisbane, I really like it here because it's good weather. So you answer why, even though you weren't asked, and maybe the next question, the interviewer can repeat the same thing. So you may ask, why do you like Brisbane? And the trick is, you can give the same answer that you gave earlier. So in this case, you would say, I like Brisbane because it's good weather. You can't do that. So a good strategy would be to pretend like you didn't say it earlier, say the same answer. If you can, give additional information, or maybe change the answer a little bit, just so that it doesn't sound like you're repeating the same thing again and again. But overall, it's okay to give the same answer again. So the sixth tip for you would be manage the timing of your response. This comes in handy, especially in part 2, where you are given 1 minute to read the cue card and 2 minutes to speak. So my advice would be speak for the whole 2 minutes. The higher the number, the more minutes you speak, I feel that you would be achieving a better band score based on that. So let's say for people that score 7+, the usual case is that they spoke throughout the whole 2 minute section of the part 2 section of writing task, of speaking task. So always try to go through the full length of your response. In part 1, you can generally answer for like 10-15 seconds. It depends on the type of question. Some questions you can answer with 1 or 2 sentences. Some questions you can expand your answer a little bit. So keep that in mind as well. So tip number 7 would be expand your answers to buy time. So let's say in part 3 you're given the question, describe why you like a certain thing or why people do certain thing. And you are explaining to them, giving reasons, and suddenly you are out of time. That becomes a huge problem to most students. So in order to prevent that, what you can do is try to expand a few of your answers. And one way to do that is, for example, if you're describing a location, try to expand on that by describing what the exact physical object is, what the surrounding area looks like, what direction it is in. Like you can say things like it lies in northwest, southwest. Use location-based words like it is alongside a river, next to the library, words like that, so that your answer, even though you're giving the same information, would be longer and would be more appropriate timing. And your examiner may think that is the kind of length I want and may give you a higher band score. So keep all these tips in mind when you are giving your speaking test for IELTS. If you want more tips like this, you can come to EnglishWise Brisbane, come to one of our classes where we talk in depth about these kinds of strategies. Thank you for watching the video.